Mamara ke ki te wā Tutaki taki ana I te wākwa hipa Taku iti, taku pona mu Pera rawa I te are are o te wai Takiri ana te hihi o tamanui Hei rama I te ara
Te reo o te iwi.
Ko aukaha, ko tōku tūranga waiwai.
Aukaha, ngā kaupapa arohe.
Aukaha, tōku tino rangatiraanga.
Ko aukaha, ko ngā rangatira o a pōpō.
Aukaha, te Taumata Kōrero.
Wā ka tauha whakatau ko te rangi etu nei, ka tauha whakatau ko te papa e takoto nei, ka tauha whakatau ko te taumata kōrero o ngā mātua kua mene ki te pō ka tihei. Maori o rei ngā iwi o te motu. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, no mai hoki maira, welcome back to the podcast, the Taumata Kōrero, the quintessential space to wait for it, disseminate a little bit of esoteric knowledge. I am the man back in the hot seat. I can see my guest smiling at the nature of the host. He's not too bad if I say so myself. E hoama, I am back, Mr. Raniera Harrison, ready to drop some knowledge for you all this evening. I have already mentioned I have a guest waiting in the wings. If you are following us on social media, you will have seen we have, if not the star of the Netflix smash hit, the Casketeers, waiting in the wings for us. Let's bring him in to dissect, to disseminate a little bit of esoteric knowledge. The one, the only, the man, the mystery, but more importantly, my tuakana, Mr. Francis Tipene. E te tuakana e Francis, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, te tuakana e Raniera, a mo e rā o ngā mihi, ko mihi mai ki au, o tira ki te iwi, e mātakitaki maina, e whakarongo maina, a tēnei rā hau e mihi āroha, e mihi nui atu ana ki a koe, kia tātu katoa, tēnā koe tau.
Kia ora, kia ora. Kia timata pea a tāua kōrero I tēnei pō. Kia huri tāua ki te kōrero mō ngā huatanga kairunga I a koe, kia mōheo ai ngā kai whakarongo me ngā kai mātakitaki ko wai tēnei, kua tae mai I tēnei pō ki runga I tō tātou taumata kōrero. Tell us a bit about yourself, Chief, you know, where you're from and all that sort of jazz, all that sort of carry on.
Kia ora. Ki te taho taku māma, on my mum's side, I'm a tipene from a place called, we originated in Panguru, or we settled there, but we originated in Mangamuka. Our tupuna there, the tipene from there, there's urupā with a lot of our ancestors who are interred there, buried there. And then from there we moved over to a place called Panguru, tērā wāhi ko kikato I te hunga katorika. And then from there, my grandfather moved to Auckland, met a beautiful lady from across the hill in Pawarenga, a wharewaka. It was my grandmother, Helen. Ka puta mai ko taku mama, ko Helen Jr. And so that's, tērā taha. And ki te taho taku pāpā, I'm a Tongan. My mum obviously had a thing for ngā taitamatāni au a wāno roto ngā mautere o te moana nui a kiwa, e ko pai tērā, taku waimari, hono ko puta mai ko au e kōrero nei kia koe. And so from that point, I think at the time my mum was quite young, and so there was that system of whānga, you know, when mum had me, I think about 16, and then Nan and Pop came along on my Māori side, said, oh no, give that boy here. And so they took me back to Paoringa where they lived, and I was brought up there with the whānau, and then sent down to Auckland to Hato Petere College for boarding school. And after that went on to do some teaching degree at te wānanga takiura o ngā kurukapapa Māori Aotearoa with via car. Me tērā matu a tātou, a tāwhiri. And then kei taua wāhira ka tūhonua tu taku horanga tira ko kai ora. Ana ko e nei a hau e roho nei, e mihi nei kia koutou. Kia ora rā.
Kia ora, kia ora. I just want to run with that. Talk to me about that. Like, there's something, you know, when you cross people in the street, or when you meet anyone, really, you can kind of tell those people who have spent time with their elders. Now, I'm not too surprised when you tell me that, you know, your mother had you at the age of 16. Kātahi ka haere atu tō te rao tātou kaumatu me te kuia ka mea tu hena, homai tērā tamaiti, hei mea tiaki maku. Talk to me about that, bro. Looking at that retrospectively, that must be a really, you must, you know, kind of have some really fond memories about those times growing up with kaumatu of that era.
Yes. It wasn't until I was older, like Yaya Nina. Back then, I did miss mum and dad, you know, as a young child. And you know, ko āhua, whawhai taku māma ki taku grani māma, grani papa. But I think that's normal within all families when you're dealing with a tamaiti. And so for me, you know, Tāmaki Makaurau is here. Paoringa is all the way up north in the middle of nowhere. Nan and Pop, they'd bought a Skyline garage, which still stands today. But back then it had no power. We had no running water. And so going down to mum's, to Auckland for the holidays, where there was, you know, the light switch, TV. Oh my gosh, that was just the best thing ever. And a bath, you know, that we didn't, Pop has to go up and get the water from the bore, bring it down, and we boil it and then tip it in the tub outside. And so all those things, when you go to Auckland and just turn the tap, turn the switch, you know, the light at night time was the kerosene, fill the kerosene lamp up and spark it up with the lighter to get it going. All of these methodical things Pop had to do at night. It's not until now you look back and go, man, holy, you know, you blessed. But back then, I want to go to Auckland. I want to go to, you know, the shops and the TV and that. But you know, those in retrospect now, I look back and man, I would not have it any other way, and I'm so grateful. But about, you know, having been brought up with my grandparents, and the funny thing is, when I come into contact with other people like myself who are brought up with their grandparents, we have a similar ahua and lifestyle and demeanor about us, you know, and our whakaaro are the sort of similar. And I sit there and go, and when you kōrero and you go, man, you know, tupu mai koe ki te taho o krani mātua, and mea mai ai. And so it's like, oh, yeah, it's very similar in the way in which we've both been brought up. And that I'm truly grateful for, and I believe deep down that probably wouldn't be, not saying, you know, we've got everything and we're so amazing and this and that, but I wouldn't be and have the knowledge and the mental capacity that I have now if it wasn't for being brought up, you know, next to them and listening to them, you know, the reo Māori. As I sit here nowadays and whakarongo au ki a koe, ki te karere te ao, Māori news, and, you know, then I listen back to my remember back when lying in bed, hearing them gossip and talk, and all the words, I thought, man, what? There's so much transliteration back then, you know. Oh, they're gossiping about the one up there. Oh, tera sira muitai ana me te tāne o tara. What the hell? And I never hear those words now. But yeah, and you'd understand that. You'd be like, tera te kōrero te nota. And so all those little things, and te rakapuna, hena, ho mai tēnā, you know, all of those things, and we hardly hear it. And so when I hear kōrero, a koe noki, it's just a delight, because you bring back themes of nostalgia, and so you go back and oh man, that's like listening to Nan and Pop, and so it's really, really beautiful. So yeah, so that's how that was, being brought up with a Nan and a Pop, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Having said that, at the time as a young person, of course you want everything, you know, you want this, you want power, you want to go to the shop. I mean, at the time we did have a little store in Paoringa, and so we'd go down, Pop and I would go down on the horse to the shop, and you know, an ice cream, a lollipop, as any child, it's just the bomb. It's so awesome. And Yane now, kids, oh Dad, can I have this on Uber, this Big Mac, this and this and this, and you know, it's just like, wow, you know, one lollipop or an ice cream was amazing back then. And so how times have changed, and you always say, oh, you know, me and my wife would look at each other and say, oh, they want an Uber for dinner, and you go, oh, you know, let's give them everything we didn't have. But then I think, actually, hang on, I might be doing a disservice to the kids if, you know, you just give and give and give. And so, you know, her and I are in this that sort of space right now, talking about, especially after lockdown, how they've been home for the past 4 to 5 weeks, how we're gonna try and implement some of our upbringing, because my wife's upbringing is quite similar with 12 children, and mum and dad were very frugal and had to make, you know, stretch and make ends meet. And so yes, so to answer the part, I'm very grateful and thankful to Nan and Pop, Helen and Wally. But at the time, as a young person, like any young person, you want all the things that a young person wants. And I do remember there was a show on Channel 1. Pop had we had a little black and white TV which you could put a battery. So he got the car battery out, brought it inside, and we hooked the TV power leads up to the battery from the car. And you know, back in the days it was fizzy, black and white, to get that sound and that look. I'd just sit there and watch that. I'd be so happy. Holy moly, we've got a TV. And then the show that came on was Sale of the Century. Now I didn't know what it was about, but yeah, Sale of the Century. Judith, I think, in this Pākehā fella, man, it was just the bee's knees, hey. Loved it so much, although I didn't understand, but just to see someone and something else on the TV, and the next minute, you know, ko te hau o te patara hera, battery run out, and then we have to figure out how to charge to start the car up. But all of those things were just memories which I cherish. And I tell the kids, kia ora.
Tēnā koe. E te tuakana, he haro mai te whakarongo i a koe hoki maharatu ana ki era raumaharatanga mō ngā kaumātua me ngā kuia. Horekau konei i tēnei rāne. Wētahi, ko ngā maharatanga mō rātou e hoi nāno te mea mautonu ana ki Wainganui te hunga pēne i a tāu ane. Ki haere tonu wā tāua kōrero, let's keep our conversation rolling. Ko te take i toro atu a hau ki a koe, take i toro atu ki a koe. Nā te mea, i aini pēr ko te hunga e kahana te pānui taku Instagram ka kite i te kōrero ko koe. I think what I bill you as the most well-known funeral director in New Zealand. Kia roha mai. No reira, tērā kōrero. So I think you are, in my eyes, at least one of the most qualified persons to at least give some sort of insight into this thing that we have all engaged with in some way, shape or form, some sort of capacity, death. This is your business. You deal with this every day of the week. Kōrero mai, o whakaro, mo te mōhio, mo te matatau, mo te marama, o te iwi Māori ki tēnei mea te mate. How do we as Māori go about dealing with, engaging with this concept, this unavoidable concept, that is death? Talk me through your experiences and how you see that.
Kia ora. Tuatahi, kāre he iwi, kāre he tangata, tuatu ia ngai tāua te Māori e mōhio marika nei ki tēnei āhuatanga o te tangihanga. There is no, people turn to us as a culture, as a people, and ask every time I go and do interviews on the TV and whatever different people want to talk about funerals and that, they always ask, as a obvious Pākehā, they said, oh, do you think Pākehās do funerals wrong? And my answer is yes, diplomatically, and trying to say it nicely, sensitively, because us as a people, we're very, and also a tāua whanaunga no roto ngā mautere te moana nui a kiwa. And so us, we just got it right, hey? This thing about taking our loved ones back to the marae o a tātou tūpāpaku, me te moitahi, me te kōrero tahi, te waiata, te whakakata, i a tātou anō, aua tū momo āhuatanga, it's all part of the healing process. And it helps us transition from te ao mate nei, te ao pauri, tātou e mau nei, kōrero tēnei tēnei mea te kākahu taratara, e mau nei te whānau pani, ngā pauaru. These things are so important that it helps us transition from there. Kia tanu mea tātou te tupāpuka, or nowadays we ka tahu, cremate, and then ka hoki mai tātou ki te marae. We have our mihi again, our karakia, to say ana ko ea tērā, and then we go and kai. And that's our transition from here, this space, into that space. Haere mai ki te ao marama, hoki mai ki te ao marama. And that is just so beautiful. And as we compare that to our I mean, I have got in our mortuary down the road there, we have got 34 tūpāpaku in our care, half of which are Pākehā. And I'm so grateful that they're keeping their loved ones, for that long, because they want to have a celebration or a funeral. And so, but what generally they do is the tūpāpaku, and I'm speaking broadly, would normally stay in our care for the duration of the funeral, and the whānau would come for about 10 minutes to see, and then go home. They might come the next day. They might come the next day to make an appointment to say, oh, could we see Mum for another 10 minutes, And then the next time they would see the person they love would be at the funeral, obviously with a closed casket. And so that's the proper service where we'll have a burial or cremation afterwards. And so the time they spend is, very minimal. And a lot of things in terms of the way that their culture, and that's when we're speaking not from a racist point of view, just from a general point of view, because a lot of them have regrets about funerals that they've attended. A lot of my Pākehā whānau, they go, oh, when Nan died, we weren't allowed to see her. We were whisked away, and then next minute we were at the funeral. And so, we want to try and encourage whānau, wa tātou whānau Pākehā. Haere mai te kite i te tūpāpaku, your mum, your nana. And another thing they do wrong a lot is they keep the children away. They go, oh no, it's too much. Oh my God. No, we're going to keep the kids home and we'll come and see mum. In fact, the children are so much stronger than us as adults. It's going to help them in the future. And so that's what we encourage. Oh, no, bring the kids. Give them a pen and to draw on the lid and write a message to Nana and to Papa. And, the success rate for us with a lot of our Pākehā whānau is about 50%, but a lot of them are like, no, it's just too traumatizing. And I say, okay, ka pai. But we can only do so much. And so if we take what I've just said there about our Pākehā whānau, and then you compare that to us as a people who need 3 days off from work, and we pour all our money in to go shopping, and we kill the beef, kill the cow, because we need to be together for 3 to 4 days. By the time we come to the burial or the cremation, paukato ngā roimata, paukato ngā kōrero, ko mutukato, well, not the mamai, but all the feelings we've been able to let out. People have come, they've spoken words of beautiful words, some not so beautiful, so it all happens, and this is how we've got it right. We've got it absolutely right, and that I'm very proud of as a people. But I don't go around, parading it. Oh my gosh, we're the best at all of this. But it's just something that I've been given a platform tonight with you to say it publicly, that we do it beautifully. That being said, kōrero.
Okay, kai au koe.
Well, that being said, COVID has made this very difficult. And so, you know, when we normally take our tūpapaku in the car, or the whānau bring the van, we load the tūpapaku there and they go off to the marae, it hasn't been so. And so we've had to find alternative ways. Whānau do, they give us suggestions, we give suggestions, because we can still make this work. We just got to, the tikanga I'm so grateful for now. I feel nervous speaking about this word in front of you. He tangata mātanga ki te ao Māori, ana ho koe tēnā, me koutou whakarongo mai nā. But the great thing is with the tikanga, we're able to adapt it to a situation which has been put in front of us. And so let's be adaptable. And a lot of family are like, oh no, that's not tikanga. Don't put that phone on my dead mother. Don't do that. And I was like, okay, kei te pai, we don't have to do that. A couple of days later, or tangi mai taku wā pūkoro, actually, Francis, can we see her? You know, because it does eat away at you, knowing that mum is here and you're up the road and you can't see her. And that's awful by all means, you know, by any measure. And so what we'll do is just set the phone up on the FaceTime or the Zoom or the Skype, let it sit there for an hour, and the whānau just, oh my, it's such a beautiful thing. I've seen it and I've been watching them, and they all come together, all the different whānau from around the world, talk to their mum. The problem they all have is muting one another. Everyone's talking, but because everyone's got so much to say, so much to sing and cheer, and it's just a lovely event. And so I'm so proud of the way in which we've adapted this to the COVID Delta outbreak, lockdown, as a people, as a iwi. We've embraced the hangaro, the technology that has been put before us, much like we're doing this evening. And so it's been really nice, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And I know halfway through level 4, the government eased up the rules a little bit and allowed us to allow 10 whānau from the same bubble as the tūpapaku to come in to view their loved one. And that changed things so much. It settled, because once some whānau got to see, they were able to report back to the rest of the wider whānau, mum's okay, mum's looking good, or dad, auntie, or pepe. And so those that contact, the visual, the physical viewing of a tūpapaku was important. At the time, you weren't allowed to touch or kiss the tūpapaku according to the guidelines. And so it's that was very difficult for a lot of whānau. But just being in the room and seeing their mother or their loved one, it was something else. And now we're at level 3. Things have changed again. So I'm just so grateful for technology and for the people and the manner in which we're able to adapt to the way of living now. And I think it's, you know, we've got to get used to Zoom and FaceTiming and, you know, messaging on all of that, because it's probably going to be a lot more needed than we think.
Kia haere tonu me tērā taumata o te kōrero. Let's keep going on with that sort of discussion, and I think that's an awesome segue into my next series of questions. And I do really want to talk to you about how you've seen in your line of work our tikanga compromised with something like alert level 4. Those of us who are on social media would have seen there was a video that popped up a few weeks ago, and to my knowledge, my regional knowledge, it was filmed at the Manukau Memorial Gardens. It was a Tongan family, and hearing the so obviously it was a kuia, an elder lady, a mother who had passed away, and hearing the daughter as the not being able to accompany her mother to her final resting place was just simply heartbreaking. Talk to me how you've seen in your line of work our tikanga compromised, or are we doing a good enough job to be able to keep making enough compromises? How much compromise is too much when it comes to tikanga? All of those sorts of discussions to be able to allow ourselves to engage with one of the most, in my opinion, beautiful acts that we will ever have to go to, return one another back into our whenua. Talk me through that, e te tuakana.
Kia ora. That is something that hinders me every day, and you know, how much are we going to compromise this? How much? But because the main thing is that we're worried about is you know, ko te tuku I ngā wairua o ngā tini tūpapaku e tiraha nei ki roto ki te wharemate. How are we going to properly send off in the manner in which everything's running? I mean, especially at that level 4, no minister, no pōtoro, no kuia kaumātua, we're allowed into the burial sites to properly, tuku, karakia, and, how are we going to know, how are we going to be settled? Now, a lot of them are going to say, kei te pai, me tanu, and then we'll go back later and we'll finish it. And so that's beautiful.
Kia ora.
But still, it just doesn't feel right. And I think with some more help from our and guidance from our Māori MPs who are in Parliament, it can be done safely and properly to because there's space there. I mean, the thing is, in a funeral home or in a whare nui or in a space where it's inside, we need the space. Ne? But when you're outside at a cemetery, there's heaps of space, and that was the argument. Like, hang on, I'd rather the whānau not come into the funeral home at level 4, but come to the grave to have that final, because that lowering of the casket, oh my goodness, is the hardest thing for anyone, because that is the finality of it all. And also, generally, when we're lowering, we have a minita, ka tuku i ngā karakia, ka tuku i te wairo, ka rere, aua āhuatanga katoa, they weren't able to be followed through. And so that really, tossing and turning and thinking about how can we do this better? What can we do to because no doubt we'll be there again at some point, to properly make this happen so that things can be done properly. Now, this is obviously at a public or a council-owned cemetery. When we take or return our tūpapaku in level 4 to whānau urupa, it's a bit different there, because they generally will bring a minister. They've got to dig the grave themselves as a whānau, as a hapu iwi, and so it's a lot better there. It's just for those whānau who are going to be buried or interred ki tāmaki makaurene o ki ngā taone matua, ngā taone nui o roto o Aotearoa, where the council are, they have their own sets of rules, and that is what is difficult. And so when you saw the video clip there of the daughter, Tangiana mo tōna māma, had we not been in a level 4 and we would have been level 1, that would have been a huge funeral. Tongan people next to Ngāi Taua te Māori, they know how to do it, so that kia muturano te tanu i te pāpaku, ko pau katoa ngā roi mata. They have said, they have cried, they have sworn, they've sung, they've done everything, a puta katoa te riri, and they're ready to move on. And so that's why it was difficult. They weren't able to finish. It feels incomplete to them. And so now that we're at a level 4, level 3, 10 whānau are allowed to accompany their loved one into the urupa, along with 5 other, you could have 2 funeral directors with a kaikaranga and 2 ministers. So that's so beautiful, because we've realized now how important it is to have that karakia from a kaumā to a kuia, a minita, and or a kaikaranga accompanying the funeral director. So that was never the case last year. So this is something new that's been implemented, and I hope that if we ever go to level 4 again, that it stays this way, because it can be done safely. There's so much space that we can space ourselves physically. Everyone's got masks and all the gear on and gloves, but not moving from the fact that COVID is real, Delta is real. I understand that, but it's it's compromising. Like you asked me in the question, how much are we going to compromise? And so, I mean, I'm just a Francis, and I don't have much say in all of it, but it's how much will I stand to do this until we lobby and say, look, the next time, can we have certain tikanga upheld like at level 3? Because this is perfect. This is wonderful.
Tēnā koe. I fully agree, e te tuakana e Francis. You mentioned the 2020 lockdown, March, April, May, that all of us will have been a part of, I hinga taku kuia, I te May, te marama o May, 25th of May, my kuia passed away. And we had her here at home in Whangare, ka hinga taku kua mate taku kuia, ka mate ki te kawe ki te whakahoki ia ki te kau, ki roto I tērā iwi o tātou, ki roto o te aupauri. And I think that for me, you know, like not being involved as much, you know, obviously acting in that whānau pani role in sort of the organizational and the structural kind of discussions that were going on, it was really insightful to kind of see and see from the outside looking in those sorts of wānanga that were going on within different iwi. And at that particular time for my kuia passing, that was a discussion had by te aupauri. How are we going to deal with this? Ko a tātou tikanga, te mea nui ke hapaitia a tātou tikanga, ai, e te whakai tātou, me hapai a tātou tikanga. Hoi anō, me whakarongo tonu ki te kāwanatanga e mea ana anei. No reira, it was really awesome to see the polarity in the discussion and the narratives that, you know, one half of te aupauri was saying, oh, no, rima te kau nahi ngā tāngata, me tau ke tau mai ki te marae, and another half of te aupauri was saying, hey, haere katoa mai, te iwi katoa, koe nei te marae o te iwi. You know, this is the marae of te aupauri. Ko ai just sitting down ki te tohu mai ki a te aupauri, me pehea ki runga I tōna no marae. So, yeah, it's really interesting times, and I think, you know, we've had a shift when it comes to the Delta variant as well. You know, ki noke ake te rā mea te Delta, I te rā o te COVID-19. So it's really interesting to hear your insights, how you're seeing and those compromises, I think, because we're not just compromising anything. It's not just compromising ko a tātou tikanga ene. E wānanga ti ana. No reira, e mihi ana rā ki te hunga pēnei a koe. Pēnei a koutou, e hāpai tunu ana I a tātou tikanga. I want to take our discussion to a more of a happier place, to a more of a more positive energy, upward-facing, forward-moving direction. Let's talk Netflix. Let's talk one of the most critically acclaimed series on our television sets at the moment. Funny you talk about television and Pawarenga and the little boy having to turn the car on, because who would have thought that some decades later you would have ended up as one of the most recognizable faces on a television screen. The Casketeers, bro. Talk to me about that.
Kia ora. No, and pono, true concept. Look, it happened. This was an idea that at the time, maybe about 10 years ago, Annabelle Lee Mather and Kaiora, they were good friends, and so she said to her, look, e hoa, I was thinking of doing a show called The Casketeers, following you and your husband and your staff around with tangi and seeing what you do and going to funerals and seeing everything that happens behind the scenes. And so haere mai taku wharangatira Kaiora te mea mai kei, darling, pehe o whakaro mo tēnei a whakaro a Annabelle. And she told me, I said, oh no, Kaori, that is no way. That is tapu, that is sacred. I'm not going to be displaying all the tūpapaku on the national TV. E kao. And then and that was the first year, 5 years in a row, I pātai mai a Kaiora me Annabelle. And finally at the 5th year, I said, okay. At that time, the social media was just flourishing, you know, and so you saw photos of whānau gathering at a tangi. You saw caskets being moved from the marae to a whānau car or a hearse. You saw burials happening, and I thought, o tērā pe ko tai te wā, maybe this is the right time. But we had to make sure it was the time of the people, not the time of the Francis or the Kaiora, because we are about the people. And so at that time, it was still a risk, but it was a bit more of a calculated risk. Taku mea tuki taku horangatira ko tai te wā whakai au kia haere mai na kamera au o tangata katoa a Annabelle mā. And so at that time, it all started, and so even on the news, you know, like there was the stream, the live streaming. There was a couple of high-profile live stream tangi that took place. One particularly in the north, which, you know, even had my attention. I thought, oh my gosh, they're live streaming a tangi, which wasn't done before. You know, there was a couple of tangi that were live streaming. I thought, now we're okay, because if everyone, te mātakitaki, te nuinga o ngai tau i tēnei tangihanga, I think now we're going to be a little bit more open. So of course, there are still people right now who think, oh, that Francis, he's so dopey, he's putting on, he's an embarrassment. And so I get that, and I respect all of that. But for the most part, it is being able to show and share to, I love our people, but I make the show, and I did it not for us. We know this stuff. People come along and say, oh, Francis, all the show, it's like what we do. And I said, yeah, because it's doing what you do and what we do. But it's for others. It's for Pākehā mā. It's for, so they understand us, why we do what we do, rather than them sit there and go, oh, the bloody Maoris, they have 3 days off work and they go and eat and drink and do this. No, it's more than that. And so we wanted to be able to be insightful and inspirational. Somehow they made it, there's a little whakakatai te tangata, and I didn't realize that was going to happen. I thought it was a pure, all documentary, and so when we were being filmed, I don't really think about all the words. I thought, oh, they'll never put that on TV. That's why I was so natural and happy. I thought, oh, they would never do that. I gave Fiona a fat pill to lose weight on the first episode. Don't have this. And she said, oh, it's giving me diarrhea. And I thought, Kapa, that will never make the cut. And it did. And I thought, because they gave us a little bit of a run on episode 1, season 1. And they said, come and sit down and watch the first episode. And I was gobsmacked. I was like, holy hell! Watch all the people gonna think, oh, who is crazy? What is he? Look at his foul mouth. But I think it was just people. It was so real. It was relatable, and we weren't being who we were not. And I think that's what was. And that's Annabelle Koia Tera and the producer Susan, Susan, director back then, Leonard, the whanonga Leonards, and so they figured that concept, to always balance it out, te wao, te tangi, a heavy moment, straight away they picked it up to lift up the iwi, because although I didn't I actually want the show to be all sad. I want all funerals, all tangi. I want everyone to see all the beautiful funerals and everyone crying, because I like spirituality, I like connecting, I like feeling. And then you come along, and then once we've had a good cry, there's a silly scene over here. But that is what is good for Te Hunga Pākehā, because they can't get it'll be too much for them. They might change the channel. Oh my gosh, change the channel. But they said to me they needed to lift the audience back up. And so for Kaore and I, when we were watching it, I was like, man, this is embarrassing. But after the first episode went to air, we got all the texts and the messages from lots of people saying thank you for being open and real and honest. And we sat there together, we held hands on the couch, and when it was going on Channel 1 5 years ago, and I thought, well, darling, here we are. This is sort of did a bit of a guilt and blame. This is what you wanted. Here you go. On TV. And so unfortunately for me, and fortunately for her, she had the right thing, and she had the right whakaaro, my wife, to do this and display, but to share more about Māori having 3 days off at a funeral, going drinking and partying after a funeral. It's much more than that. And they got to see all the spiritual, the sad sides. A lot of people didn't know that they were allowed to dress their tūpapaku, especially our hunga Pākehā. They were like, I didn't know you were allowed to dress. I would have dressed my mother back when she died, 10 years ago. I was like, oh my goodness, yes, that is your mum. Mau mai wana kākahu, mau e whakakākahu, you dress your mum. And so all of those things we encourage our whānau. Māori, it's a question we don't ask. They're like, yep, what time are we going to dress, mum? So come in 3 hours, because that is just the way we are. We do all of that as a whānau and as a people. But as, other cultures and nationalities, and Pākehā mā, we always give them that opportunity now. Would you like to come and dress mum? Say, oh, no, we'll drop her clothes off and you do the dressing. Kei te pai. Would you like to watch us dress mum? Would you like to put a sock on or her T-shirt on? Oh, could we do that? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. A lot of people don't realize that it's not just a naked body sitting on a table or a dressing bed. It is a body that's covered with a towel, with a sheet, with a blanket, and everything's done privately underneath, as you would have seen in some of the show. Because it's, I guess it's all of that stuff. Like, oh, is Mum going to be on like a steel mortuary table like in the movies? And so it's just getting them out of that. It's like, well, yeah, that's the New York, that's the USA. This is the Aotearoa. It's a bit different here. And so with that, you know, this is where we've come to. And so this is the beautiful thing about the show, is that we're able to share our culture to others here in Aotearoa, but also te ao whānui katoa.
Bro, you raised some really valid points, and I was having messaging one of my friends earlier around this discussion. There's been a lot of discussion about a particular Pākehā singer engaging in te reo Māori and releasing te reo Māori albums and the like, and we started talking about whether or not New Zealand, whether or not Aotearoa is ready to have this discussion about how truly bicultural we are. And I think, I know it's not lost on you. You would have already seen in the last 4 years, the 4 seasons of the Casketeers, that this goes a very long way in playing some part in the decolonization of Aotearoa, the re-indigenization, the decolonization of Aotearoa, the re-indigenization of these spaces with something so special, so special, so precious to us. So, yeah, that's it's an interesting, really interesting concept, and one that I think we didn't know we needed. You know, some of the concepts you bring up, like ka hoki mahara ki te wā I haria e au etahi exchange students I te wā I au I kone I whāngārei nei. I took some exchange students to a tangihanga, and they were just beside themselves. So they were from Denmark, and they were just really besides themselves why there was so much laughter, why there was like so much like you know, people getting cheeky, you know, people, you know, all of those sorts of things. And you know, you have to, as Māori, I think it's really important, like with what yourself and Kaiora are doing, is to really break that down, you know, so we can start having those discussions about how truly bicultural we are. Me mea he oranga kai roto I te kōrero he iwi ko tahi tātou. Well, we have to understand one another, first and foremost, and what better way to understand about how we engage in these practices around death, ne?
Yes.
Kia hoki au ki te kōrero mō tētahi atu I runga I tērā hōtaka. I just want to say, and because I've got the star of the show, the Casketeers, I just want to say I really vibe with, and a lot of my friends vibe with, Nona. She is something else.
She is, oh my gosh. She is one that I can and can't live without. You know, there are some days that I'm just like, Nona, and she, especially when she's hungry, she is a hua. She's such a hua, that one. And then, you know, there are days when she's not in, you miss her voice, her moaning and her groaning. We're more like brothers and sisters rather than boss and that, because that's the way we have to be to make to keep the ball going, you know, because she's an expert in her line of mahi, and with her culture and the people, but also in the way in which it's just very like daughter-like and sister-like and cousin-like. It's not that I'm the funeral director and this is what you will do. Oh, kahore, no way. It's just, you know, she just makes people feel so comfortable and at ease. A lot of the time she spoils a lot of families, and that's why she's overworked. She's got sore knees and sore ankles, but she's on this hauora buzz at the moment, which is so good for her. But everyone loves Norma, and so do we. When she walks in the room, you know, we could be having a kōrero, and she's just like, hey, kia ora e hoa, you look like a kaumātua today, you know, because we had the wiki o te reo Māori last week, and she goes, hey, kapia tō māngai, she told me all these people Māori, and it just lights up the room, and we all crack up laughing, because there's a few of us here who are Māori, and to hear her kōrero, you know, Māori, a tātou reo, it's just so beautiful. She had a whānau, a Māori funeral, and when I was Kaira and I had to shoot down to Wellington, we were on call, and she rings me and she goes, hey, I've got some news to tell you, some bad news. I said, what's that, dear? She goes, oh, the whānau that I took back to the marae. I said, yes. She said, they wanted me to do a karakia. And I said, in Māori. And she said, yes. And I went, so what did you do? She goes, oh, well, I just said, kia ora tātou, let us bow our heads in prayer. And I said, oh my gosh. Then I said, what was the prayer you said? She goes, I said, whakaria mai, tori peka ki au, ti aho mai, ra roto I te pō. And I cracked up laughing. I said, yeah, that's clever. Good thinking. And then afterwards, they sung the himene together. And I said, see, that is clever. You could have sat there and said, oh, I don't know a karakia, but in fact, that himene is like a prayer. You did the right thing. And I told all the Māori staff around here, and they cracked up laughing and gave her a high five and said, that's the one. You know, you're doing what you need to do in a situation that you had no idea what to do. And so, but that's Fiona. She's never uncomfortable. She's just like, okay, fine. What do you need? She just won't do a kāna. And I said, kei te pai tēnā. And so, you know, aua kōrero katoa just really puts everyone at ease. And so this whānau, they rang me and they said, Francis, thank you for Fiona looking after us. We had a beautiful time. So that's the main thing, that you had a lovely experience, you know, under such a sad situation. And so, you know, taku mihi ki taku tuahine a Fiona.
It's quite crack up, because you'll know too, engaging with certain orators on our marae, they're making it up just as much as Fiona is making it up on the spot too. Ka mutu e kia na o, e rere Māori no ana te kōrero I runga I te marae. We're just making it up as we go.
We go. Aye, yeah. And next minute, ko waihanga he te tahi tikanga hau mo tātou. Oh my goodness. So,
e te tuakana, kua eke ki te whātekau mā ono minutes, we've hit 46 minutes, and to be honest, that went really fast. I kind of don't want this wānanga to stop, because, you know, there's still so much more that we can get into, and I know the 779,000 viewers watching around the world will be just salivating at the prospect of two handsome men from up north disseminating some esoteric knowledge. No, I digress. Hea pea, hei whakakapi ake I wā tāua kōrero I tēnei pō. Just to wrap us up, hea pea etahi kōrero ki te hunga e mātakitaki ana, ki te hunga e whakarongo ana. What kind of words of wisdom can you impart on those who are listening when we seek to engage in this space? Tēnei mea, kia hoki au ki tāku I kia, tēnei mea, te mate, kore tae te karo. Era taumata kōrero katoa. Kind of can't get around it. What from your experience, what are some final words of wisdom, I suppose, that you can impart on our whānau who will have to engage in this space in due course?
Kia ora. A lot of us have been there and done that, but a lot of us relied on our kuia and kaumātua, because they were always the one that took care of the tangi, and then we just turned up to go to the kitchen there to help out there. But a lot of us, generation, atawa, our generation, we have to do the leading now and the engaging and organizing. And so it is pretty simple. It's pretty, you know, your funeral directors will help you through if there's a tangi in the family, and there's always someone who's been there and done that before. But one of the things that is that comes up regularly is all of the raru that within the whānau that separates and rips families apart. And they're so small little things, and so I see it all the time. And so they're, oh, Francis, if this lady comes in, she's not allowed in, she can't go and see, he can't go and see, and all of this, and we don't want the body to go here and there. You know, these are the sorts of things that if I was able to rewind a lot of the time for a lot of families, ia rātou orana, it would be to sort your issues out. Kia tai ki te wā o te mate, we can turn up. A lot of people are so stubborn. I'm not going. I'm not going to that funeral. He was a hua. He did this. He did that. You know, ia koe orana. It's just not worth it. Especially for object and material things. You know, aua mea katoa ko waiho mai ki muri nei. You know, but ngā maharatanga will be with you forever and a day. And so memories are made forever. Restore and talk out your whānau issue and raru, so that when the time comes, you know, kia haere, kia kōkiritia, kia anga whakamuatero te kotahitanga. And this is one of the main things I see all the time, all the whānau issues that they have within one another. So yeah, that's my little bit of wisdom that I see day in and day out with different families is, sort it out. And especially if the person is alive, maybe while you're alive, you be the one to put your foot forward, your hand out and say, haere mai, I need to talk and resolve issues. Yeah, but koe no, ko tāku tēnā.
Tēnā koe. E te tuakana e Francis, hara mai katoa e nā kōrero me era rau maharatanga. I kitea I roto I te hohonutanga wāu mahi, wā koutou mahi, e mahi nei, e hāpai nei, a tātou tikanga, kia tikai te whakahoki I o tātou taonga ki te kōpū o te whenua. Kanui te mihi kia koutou, me ngā kōrero katoa I horahia mai ai ki runga I tō tātou taumata kōrero I tēnei pō, me te mihi nui ake anō ki a koe, mōu I whai wāhi mai ki te kōrero ki au, āhua, ohorere takutoro atu ki a koe, ka PM text pātu hatu ki au ka mea, bro, e wāte ana koe ki te kōrero mai ki au a te pō, a te whitu karaka, ko tere tō whakae mai, ko te tohu tērā o te rangatira. No reira, tāku ki a koe e te rangatira. Tēnā koe, tēnā koe, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, kia ora rā.
Ka pai e hoa mā, that is us, done and dusted for another evening, another week, done and dusted on the Taumata Kōrero, the podcast. Just to wrap us up, me tuku pia I tētahi kōrero kia hikitia I te tapu o enei kōrero e wānanga tiakene. Unuhia rā ko te pūtake o te kōrero, unuhia rā ko te pūtake o te wānanga. Unuhia rā ko te hautapu o ngāri ki ka whakairihia ki runga. Whanno hara mai te toki. Haumie, huie, taiki e. That is us e hoa, you can get us, the Taumata Kōrero, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, all of those places where you get the goodness. It would be a bit backwards of me to plug the whānau at Tipe Funerals and say, if you need to reach out, it's all, Francis and I were talking earlier, it's always an awkward question to ask a funeral director if he's been busy. You can ask a taxi driver if he's been busy, but e harei te pātai pai, pātai atu I te funeral director mehe puku mai ia. No reira, era kōrero katoa, you can get us there. Kia hoki anō rā ki era kupu, rongo nui ra wātu e te whānau, koutou katoa kua tūhono mai rā I tēnei pō. Long live the wānanga. I am Raniere Harrison, joined by my main man, Mr. Francis Tipene. That is the Taumata Kōrero. We'll see you fellas next week. Pō Māori.
Maori